if you're not going to outlaw everything, you got to at least make it harder to get those crazy guns that everybody's using. I don't think you should be able to just walk in there and buy one. You got to be able to go through, a rigorous process to be able to buy something like that, I think. So, hopefully the people that get paid to make those decisions figure that out. My job is to play football, but hopefully the politicians can figure that one out.
God bless him for using his platform to say that. That was Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow joining the chorus of Voices in America calling for gun safety legislation, particularly speaking there about the AR-15 style rifles and pushing Congress, the guys who get paid to deal with this, to do something about the epidemic of gun violence in America. Last night, Mitch McConnell told reporters he would support the Senate bipartisan deal on guns. It's the strongest indication yet that the deal can avoid a GOP filibuster. If it becomes law, it would be the first major piece of federal legislation addressing gun violence since the year 1994. However, it does not do anything to address AR-15 style assault rifles, like the ones used to kill 19 school children and 2 teachers in Uvalde nearly 1 month ago now. Joining our coverage, Shannon Watts, founder of the group Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, and Charlie Sykes, editor-at-large of The Bulwark, an MSNBC contributor. Shannon, what do you think of the legislation?
It is an important first step. And the fact that we are breaking this logjam, if we do, and I think we will, it's historic. And we have to keep in mind that just a decade ago, about a quarter of all Democrats in Congress had an A rating from the NRA. Today, none do. And so the fact that Republicans are in conversation with Democrats and coming up with a framework that would save lives, I mean, it is very important. And I also want to keep in mind the fact that this legislation will save lives, whether it's closing the boyfriend loophole or making background checks more strict on people who want to buy guns that are under 21, or whether it's red flag laws and giving money to the states to make those more robust. All of that will save thousands of lives, and we can't lose sight of that.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie, I'm of two minds. I was on the air when Uvalde happened, and the idea that we wouldn't, as a country, decide that no one should have their hands on a weapon of war so heinous that law enforcement didn't want to risk getting hurt or killed, and they didn't run in and save children. I mean, that's where we are. That's what the weapons are that are out there. And to create new muscles, to have Democrats and Republicans agree on gun safety legislation, of all things, at a time when they don't agree on anything, and it's hard for some Republicans to answer who won the 2020 election, it's a pretty remarkable first step.
No, I agree. I mean, it is nowhere nearly enough. It certainly does not solve the problem, but I agree with Shannon that it is an important first step. And I have to admit that I was wrong, because I have the muscle memory of cynicism of watching Congress fail over and over and over again to do something. So this is an incremental step. And I'm glad to see the parties working together, because what it does is it shows that you can actually enact remedies. They may not be solutions. They won't solve all the problems, but at least that momentum is important for the next time, as opposed to the blanket veto. Now, again, I'm hopeful about this. We will see whether or not the NRA and the extreme gun rights movement mobilizes against this and finds some way to scuttle it. But so far, what I am pleased about is that, unlike many of our debates, the extreme absolutist position has not driven everything. We have not made the perfect the enemy of the good. And I think that is something, sort of one of these very, very rare moments of celebrating how the legislative process actually can work in a period in which it works so seldom.
So, Shannon, Charlie put aside his cynicism. I'm going to borrow it back for a minute. Do you, and progress is progress, but do you think we are at this place and having this conversation because the politics of doing nothing were actually worse than the politics of doing something?
I do. And look, I want lawmakers, I want Republicans specifically, to have a change on this issue. It could be a change of heart and mind, or it could be political expediency. I frankly don't care. I just want them to come to the table and to be on the right side of this issue. And NBC reported today some behind the scenes conversations about Senator McConnell is worried about inaction and what that would do to their voting support in the suburbs. You know, I'm a mom of 5. I'm a suburban mom, and I can't imagine a lawmaker doing nothing after children are slaughtered inside an elementary school. I also want to point out the fact that, you know, our movement has spent the last decade weakening the NRA. They're sort of MIA right now, and there's a reason for that. It's because we shined a light on how corrupt they are as a supposed nonprofit. So I think all of those things have come together. All the work we've done over the last decade, not just at the federal level, but in state houses and school boards and city councils, all of that has created the momentum to allow this to happen. And I want to be clear, this is a first step. Any Republican senator who votes no on this bill will be held accountable. But we have to also be grateful that finally there's some kind of bipartisan agreement that something has to happen.
Charlie, I didn't mean to rob this moment of its absence of cynicism, but I do want to put the poll numbers up. 89% of Americans support requiring background checks on all gun sales. 66% of Americans support a ban on all assault weapons. 68% support a ban on high-capacity ammunition magazines. The numbers are so lopsided. There's the NRA membership is more than 23% of Americans. I mean, they've lost their own lobby. What do you think happens after this legislation passes and is signed into law? If God willing, that's where we're heading.
Well, those numbers are so significant because they suggest, as Shannon was hinting at, that the NRA has been reduced to sort of a Wizard of Oz type institution where if you push back on them, you realize that they don't even speak for their own members. They do not speak for responsible gun owners around the country who have no problem with gun safety legislation. So there's a real gap between these extreme positions, which have had a stranglehold on the Republican Party, and frankly, grassroots gun owners, including some of their own constituents. So, what I've talked about before is that, even Republicans who've stood up against the NRA, who basically cut through all the smoke and the mirrors and the smoke and everything, will often find out that they do not speak for anything close to a plurality or a majority of the voters. So maybe this will underline this political dynamic that Americans are watching what happened, and they cannot understand why you can't even have common sense legislation.
Shannon, I can't stop thinking about all the victims and all the families of the victims, and of Fred Guttenberg, who lost his daughter, of all the Newtown families who have been forced into public advocacy. Yourself, I mean, you're doing this work. I can't imagine talking about what a gun does to a body is anything anyone wants to do. I mean, I think the reality check is how heinous we had to feel like drop-off at 3rd grade might be the last time we saw our babies for anyone to do anything.
Well, look, that's certainly what got me off the sidelines. I want to be clear, Black and brown women have been doing this work for decades without much attention at all. And when we talk about mass shootings and school shootings, they're horrific and they get so much attention because there's such a high body count. But the reality is that it's the everyday gun violence, mostly with handguns, that is killing over 110 Americans and wounding hundreds more. And so it's so important that we talk about how can we prevent gun violence, the daily gun violence that's tearing apart the fabric of our communities. And thankfully, this framework that's been put together addresses gun violence, even though it's a first step, more holistically. And it can help that everyday gun violence as well.